When I win, I will immediately bring prices down. Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again. To bring down the prices of all goods. Prices will come down. You just watch. They'll come down, and they'll come down fast, not only with insurance, with everything.
And joining us now, Democratic strategist, pollster, and MSNBC political analyst Cornell Belcher are still with us. Justin Wolfers, Ravi Agarwal, and Doug Heye. We're going to go to prices in a minute. I want to touch on what I played at the end of the last block, which was Donald Trump not ruling out taking Greenland by military force. Ravi, I want to hand that to you.
I mean, strange. There was a strange juxtaposition there between what he said on Canada and Greenland. On Canada, he's like, you didn't actually think I was serious. I'm not going to do that. I'm paraphrasing here. But with Greenland, it was the, everything's on the table kind of description of, yeah, don't rule it out. Not going to happen tomorrow, not ruling it out. Those are, frankly, nothing burger answers. They don't tell us anything. But what they do tell us, crucially, if you're in Europe, is that borders don't matter. NATO doesn't matter. Think about it. The sanctity of the most important thing from 80 years since World War II of, largely peace around the world is that you do not invade another country. You challenge that particular sort of bedrock of international law, and disaster comes next. I mean, it opens the door for anarchy and chaos around the world. Now, Trump knows this, but I think there's an element here clearly of him liking some of the chaos. He does have real, I think, designs on Greenland's resources, but my sense from his playful tone is that he's understood he isn't going to do this. However, the rhetoric matters. Rhetoric matters a lot for countries around the world, and they're disgusted by that.
Justin, I wonder, Ravi was saying a moment ago that ultimately trade wins. Trade is good for everybody. And is that what we have to look to in this moment, that ultimately everybody wants to maintain a certain status quo, a certain upward mobility, upward trajectory of the stock markets and people's finances, and that's going to maintain stability around the world, even though Donald Trump seems to be less respectful of borders, not really willing to back up NATO. You see Germany deciding to raise their debt limit, a historically austere country, because the prime minister there said, can you really believe that Donald Trump's going to back up NATO? We've got to start protecting ourselves. Is it fair just to rely on trade being the savior here?
Well, a really important part of this is to take the long view, which is the current world order in which we trade with each other, we make each other better off. As part of trading with each other, we go on business missions, we meet each other, we go for coffee, we meet each other's kids. That's really been a key part of post-war peace and prosperity over a period of many, many decades. So as much as I'm here to complain about the rising price of dolls, I worry much more because the damage to that world order could be much more lasting. The idea that trade benefits all of us is one of the reasons why actually one of the biggest complaints in the United States right now is not what China is doing to us, but what we're doing to us. That American factories can't easily buy the equipment they need from China. That's not because of decisions in Beijing, that's because of decisions in Washington. Trade does boost us all, but the problem with this is if we wall ourselves off, we're creating stronger incentives for the rest of the world to look elsewhere for more reliable trade partners and more reliable allies, and that's going to make the US a less central part of the global economy. If you're an isolationist, you might be okay with that. But the present moment has taught me to become conservative, frankly. The past few decades have been peaceful, they've been prosperous, and I want those to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I mean, Cornell, when you look at the numbers, folks are less optimistic about the future. They're less optimistic about just their own personal well-being, the country's well-being, their children's well-being. They're also less optimistic about spending. The consumer spending index is down. Talk to me about where you see cracks, or whether you see any cracks in Donald Trump's support between people not feeling good about the future. Does that translate into them saying, I'm not so sure about Donald Trump and the Republican Party?
Well, it does translate. I mean, look, he's got the lowest approval rating at this time as any president had in modern history. And, the pillars of his brand going into the election was around immigration and the economy. And look, poll after poll now shows he's underwater big time on the economy. So, and that's something that Republicans have always had an advantage on, blanketly on the economy. Although, Katie, of course, we could show economic numbers to show that actually the economy does better under Democrats, but voters believe that, have the perception that Republicans are better in the economy. He's lost that, and even and I think Washington Post's most recent poll, he's even underwater on immigration. Look, Americans want tighter, different immigration laws. They want, not so many immigrants coming into the country. Okay, that's fine. But the way he's gone about handling it, even he's lost it there. And what we see in the data, and particularly on the qualitative side, is there's a lot of angst about how he's going about this deporting people. And the idea of deporting people without due process gives a lot of voters in the middle of the road a great deal of pause. Now, the question, that $1 million question, is how much of this will splash over onto Republicans as they head into the midterm. But I gotta say, I think it's history's gonna say it's gonna be a tough midterm for them because, as you know, the party in control tends to lose seats. But if you're going into a midterm with a president at the top whose approval is 43%, and voters disapprove him on the economy and handling world affairs, it's a headwind for Republicans going into this midterm.
The telling detail in immigration, by the way, is while his numbers on the border are still good, they're still positive, his numbers on immigration, Donald Trump's, are in the negative, meaning that people are separating out what he's doing at the border, shutting it down, and the drastically lower number of crossings, with what he's doing by flying people like Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador without any due process. There is a disconnect there. I want to ask you one other question about the Democrats, Cornell. The Hill had this interesting wrinkle about Democratic disagreement on tariffs. They write Democrats have pounced on Trump's tariffs in recent weeks as only boosting prices for consumers and causing international chaos. But much of the labor movement, a key part of the party's coalition, supports tariffs to some extent to protect their industries from foreign competition. Certainly true of the UAW. How do Democrats deal with this?
By not getting in the weeds. Look, the president's numbers on the economy are tanking. You have Americans more economically anxious now than they were going into the election. It's about a broader sense of the economy, a broader sense of costs aren't going down. You're not handling the economy well. You're not putting in place the policies and focusing on, quite frankly, bringing down costs. This has been an administration that I would argue has spent more time focusing on DEI than bringing down the cost of eggs. So I think, do not get in the weeds where there is sort of disagreement on that. Because here's the thing: the tariffs could go away today or tomorrow. I mean, Lord knows he could change his mind on tariffs as we speak. So that could go away. But the core of the economy is about costs and prices not going down and people feeling angst. Speak to that angst and stay in that space.
All right, Ravi and Justin, we're going to say goodbye to you. Thank you very much.